This is a video in support of 4352 AWS project. First thing we're going to do is point out that the instructions expect you to have installed the MySQL workbench. So you need to have, you need to have this workbench installed. And let me get rid of that. This is old. Okay, so yeah, you have to have the MySQL workbench installed. This video does not go over the installation, although it is discussed in the document, project description document that came with the project. Okay. Okay, first thing we're going to do is log into AWS. Okay, I'm going to sign into the console. And it didn't prompt me for any password or the authenticator. So just to point out that you should have, of course, an ID and password needed to access your AWS account, and then I would set up the some sort of phone-based authentication. I'm using Google Authenticator, or you can. There's probably other options in terms of sending a text message or what have you. Just a word of warning: if someone gains access to your account, they can set up things like Bitcoin miners and spam generators and all kinds of nefarious stuff that will rack up the hours on your AWS. This happened to me. I won't go into how I allowed it to happen, but it was by the time I caught it, there was like $70 of charges on my account, and AWS was kind enough to forgive that. So I've had some other students have, well, it wasn't related to security, but if you screw up somehow and wind up with a big AWS bill, you can talk to their customer support, and they probably will forgive it if it's the first time. Anyway, so here we are. Now I want to point out something else that's very important. Notice that I am using the Oregon region. So there's other regions in the North America and beyond. I'm using Oregon. Reasons why, it's not important, but the reason you have to use the same region is because there are resources that you will need access to, and they're only available in this Oregon region. So make sure your region is Oregon before you start the project. So security and the region. So let's start another section. Okay, in this next step, you're going to set up your key pair, your PEM file, which you will need to log into SSH, log into your virtual machines using SSH. So here, this is where you press that, and you have all the services. And the first thing you need to do is you need to go to Compute and then EC2. And that will take you to this page here. It'll show up on whatever you last visited. And so after that, then the selection shows up in recently visited, and that's good. So go back here. And so I'm going to security and then key pairs. And so I'm going to generate a new key pair. I have one already, but I'm going to generate a new one to demonstrate it. There's nothing to it. So create key pair. And so give it a name. So this is to do key pair. I'm just thinking name it. Demo to do demo key pair. That'll do. And you have to make sure it's RSA, and you have to, I don't know why it defaults to PuTTY, PPK files, but you have to select PEM and create key pair. So notice it downloaded a file to my, here, you need this. So I am going to copy this into my C drive temp, just because it's someplace to put it. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is when we log in with SSH, we specify this key pair file. This brings up the point that you have to have SSH installed. Well, actually command. So I'm just going to use command, not PowerShell, and you have to, if you're on Windows 10, my understanding is, or at least when I set it up, that the SSH, our OpenSSH package, is not installed by default or is not available. So you have to go through a process, find it online, very easy, of enabling SSH on Windows 10. If you're on a Mac, any Linux or Unix-based machine like OS X or Linux will have SSH built into it. And also on, if you're running Windows 7, why? But you can also install with Windows 7, because OpenSSH is not available from Microsoft. You can install Cygwin, Cigwin, I believe. But anyway, here we are, Windows 10 and SSH, and it's working. So before we can use it, though, we have to set the security. So again, this is something, if you're on a Unix machine, you use chmod, chmod, to set the permissions. I think it's 077. No, 007. But on Windows, it's much more complicated. We're going to set the permissions to, read only by only the owner. I know it sounds complicated. Anyway, that's how we do it. Select a file, properties, security, advanced, and then you want to disable inheritance, and then convert. And then, excuse me, you want to essentially remove all of them, all of these permissions. And then add one. We need a permission. And so select a principal. That's who it applies to. Now this is my PC, and I know my ID is Mike. Check names. That's me. Okay. So that's the principal, the user. And then these are good. Read, write, read and execute, and then read only. So hit OK. And then there it is. Apply, important. You can't hit OK, believe it or not. You have to first apply, and then OK, and then OK. And now SSH will work with this PEM file. Okay. Looking at so you'll find this list of steps in that project description file. And let's start a new section. Next, we're going to create the a MySQL server on AWS. So we'll go up to services, and if here we want RDS, but it's not there by default, so you have to go down to databases, and then to RDS. And after a second, let's see, it's thinking. There we go. Okay, so no instances. So create a database. And so we'll do the standard create and MySQL, and community is default. And this is the version. Now it's important. Free tier is important. So select free tier. And none of this matters. And let's give it a name. So this would be the name of the server as it shows up. We'll just go AWS to do demo DB, something like that. Okay, now we're going to set the credentials. So we're just going to use passwords to log into the server, or the application will use a password. So leave the master username. This is like the root of the database. So we'll leave it at admin, and then I just have my password. Oh, so let's start something here. This is a good practice. Start an editor, and I'm going to write down addresses and stuff here. So the admin slash my throwaway password. All right, twice. And just leave that as it is. Leave that alone. Leave that alone. Now this is important right here. Public access, yes, very important. And we want to create a new security group. Now a security group is the equivalent of a firewall. And so we're going to, the virtual machine that hosts the database gets a firewall, and we want to set one up. So I'm just going to give it a name. My SQL to do demo MySQL SG, because we have to find it later. That'll work. Leave that alone for time being. Password authentication, leave that alone. And I think that's it. I'm 99% certain that's it. We'll get that later. We don't care if it backs up. I don't think this matters, but I'm going to turn it off just because I have been turning it off, but I think I left it on when I was practicing yesterday. I left it on once and it didn't seem to matter, but I'm turning it off now. And that's it. Create database. Oh, didn't like something. I guess you can't put a space in there. Let's try that again. All right. I've been being very careful not to put spaces and everything, and that time I did, and I guess it does matter. All right, so notice it's in this creating mode. So it's going to be in creating for a few minutes. And so I'm going to start a new section of the video. Okay, while the database is finished baking, let's fix the security group we just created. So we're going to go to EC2, and we will scroll down to security groups. And I have some here already. You can ignore them. But of course, here's a demo to do MySQL created. And it's just about right as it is. So, well, let me back up and say, okay, so this is a security group, and it's essentially a firewall. And like a firewall, it has inbound rules and outbound rules. We don't really have to modify the outbound rules, but the inbound rules have to change. So if I scroll down here, well, I can't, so I'll just select this, and I would edit inbound rules. So we have one rule, and basically it's TCP. Now 3306 is the default MySQL port number, and the only thing that's wrong here is that the way AWS sets up the firewall is it gives permission for my machine only. So this is the IP address of my router here at home, and so this rule will not work with AWS, because when we try to connect to AWS from our servers, from our EC2 machines. So we want to get rid of that, and we'll want to do a custom anywhere IP4. So that's where it should be. And everything else is fine. So we'll save the rule, and then it's good. And so we're done with that. And so let's go back and check on our database. Oh, well, come on. Instances. And it's ready to go really, but let's we need to do something here. So let's select the machine, and we need the endpoint. So this is the DNS name, public DNS name of this database server. So we'll need that in a second. So I'm going to copy it, and like I said, I'm just going to paste it here so it'll be on hand later. And what else? That's about it. Backing up. I don't know if don't think that means it's available. So I'm going to pause for a second and come back when I think it's ready. Okay, so back, and you can just so you know, end this page. Then you can use the, having trouble finding it right there. You can just refresh the page. It's marked as available. So the server is running, and in theory, we're ready to go. So the next step is to install the MySQL Workbench connection. So here I have MySQL Workbench again installed, and we're going to add a connection. So we'll call this the to-do demo DB, just give it a name. Now this is not right, so that's where our little IP address comes in. And make sure you get the whole thing. Yep, 3306 is good. Now here we recorded admin as the ID, but for some reason the workbench says root, so, or vice versa. And so here we have everything, but the nice one nice feature here is we can first test the connection. So we'll do test, and then it's going to ask for that password, and it's a good idea to save it. Why not? And then you hit OK, and it should work. Successfully made. So if it was unsuccessful, a couple of things could be wrong off the top of my head. The server is not running. When you configured this server, you did not specify publicly accessible, or you didn't set up the security group correctly. So, but of course, here we are. And so we'll save it. And so the next thing now is to install the schema. So let me find the correct, looking for something on screen. Yeah, that's what I want. So in e-learning, there is a script file, SQL script file. So connect with that. We'll connect to our server. And now we're connected. And we have the default schema. And so we want to install the new schema. So all you have to do is with an open editor, which it is by default, an open text editor, I will grab the SQL file and drag it in, and there load it up. So this contains all the SQL needed to create the schema, create the table, and then insert a row into it. So we'll collect this with nothing selected. We'll look here and we'll say execute the selected portion, nothing, or everything if there is no selection. So this will do, and we'll get these 10, should all be green. These warnings are normal. And then when we refresh the schema, we should get that 2D database and with a table. And then we could do any number of ways, but say select rows, and then it'll execute the script, and there will be our default row, our first row. All right, so now the database is all set up, and in theory, we won't need MySQL Workbench again. So I'm going to close it and drag this over there, and that's it for this section. Okay, so here we are, step 7, install the EC2 server. So now we're going to create the first of 3 virtual machines that will host our application servers. So services, EC2, and we'll go to instances, and we have no instances, and we'll launch an instance. And then here's an important bit. We'll go to community AWIs, I don't know if it matters, and select filter on SE4352, no spaces, SE4352. And that should bring up this AWI, this is AMI, sorry, AMI, which is an Amazon machine image. Oh, it's right up there. Yep. And so this is a configured EC2 server that has the app server, Tomcat, installed on it, and the scripts, and the jar file. Well, actually not the jar file. The WAR file will install. And anyway, it's all set up to go, except for a few changes. So anyway, we're going to select it. And then we're just going to take the next config. And so now we're going to need to, for some reason I didn't do that. Review and launch, that's what I wanted. So here we are. And so edit security group. And so we're going to create a new security group. And so we'll call it to-do EC2. Oh, that bugs me. EC2 Tomcat, something to give it a name. Okay, now we set it up. So we need to have 2 ports open on this machine. 1 port for SSH, so we can SSH into the machine from our sorry, I was thinking of something else, from our desktop, and then a second port at 4352 for the Tomcat server. So let's I guess just add the rule. Okay, just what we need to do. Okay, this is a little bit different than I was expecting, but okay, I'm going with it. So we want to change the. This is already correct, but let's just make sure. So SSH 22, and I believe this is already correct, but we'll just do anywhere. Well, actually, it added a little bit there, so that's good. Then now custom TCP port number 4352, and then anywhere as well. So you should have a security group. I'm going to write that down. Yeah, that's good. And then review and launch. So now everything's ready to go. It doesn't like it because I'm not used, because it's accessible from anywhere, and it's true. It's not a good idea. It's a terrible way to deploy a service, but we're using it, just for making it easy for us to set up. We'll launch it. And now the last part is we have to select a key pair. So this is the one I just created. Okay. And so acknowledge, launch, and view instances. And so now we have to wait till this goes ready. And again, this happens pretty quick, or in the past it happens pretty quick. So I think when this goes ready, we're ready. I practiced this a few times yesterday, but it's a process I only do once a year or so. Um, I don't know if I should pause. I'm going to pause and come back. Okay, just a few seconds later, it went to running. And so what we need now is we need the address. So description, and that's private DNS, public right there. It's always one place or another. So they give you a little copy to clipboard. And so I'm going to record that first one. And all right. So now let's log into the machine. Well, no, let's do something else. First thing we're going to do is see if we can access the machine and that Tomcat's running. So we have our address, and in it we will, and then we need the port number for the server, which is configured at 4352. Hit return. There we go. So now we're connecting to that server we just created, the Tomcat server. This is the Tomcat administration console, which we should not be able to access from the internet. This is a huge security problem, but for our little demo, it's just fine. And so what you need to do is these buttons do different things. But what we're interested in, I should have done that right here, manage your app, and we want to log in. So in this instructions, I'm going to have to find it. Right here. Yeah, right here. So this is the ID and passwords you need to get into those consoles. And I'm just going to plop that right there. So ID and password. And whatever. So here we are. This is the manager. And if you're interested, now this probably would work. Yeah, server status, all kinds of information about the status of the server, how much memory it's using, yada yada. Anyway, so manager app, and so this is working, and I'm going to end this section and move on to the next. Okay, next we need to configure this server, Tomcat server, for the application, and to do that we need to log on to the machine. So we need to start a, let's close that, start another SSH session. I'm just going to use CM command shell. All right, so again, testing, SSH is installed, we're good. And so then we want to log onto that machine, and so we need the address. And I'm just going to create a template for this because it's just easier to copy and paste each time. ec2-user at. Yeah, this is good enough. So SSH, oh, my mistake. I need to get to that directory, temp, where I have placed the that PEM file, the key file. So c:cd temp. All right. Now I'm going to do a failure first. So if we imagining that this file, I went through the process of setting the permissions to read only by the owner, but let's say we didn't. So I have another PEM file that I created and then but didn't change permissions. So let's try using that. SSH -I junk, and then audit this. So right button, paste. So EC2 -user is the default user on the machine. You have to log in with this. You can't log in with root, for example. Add, and then the DNS of that server. And yes, that's just asking to save the key store. And then here, so this is good. It is required that your private key files are not accessible by others. Oh, this is the private, not the public. Never mind. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So this key file has not been configured. It wouldn't work anyway because it's not the key file we used to create when we created the server, but just to point out that. So let's actually use the correct file. Just start over again. And it was 2D. Oops. Okay, and then I'm not sure it's still in my paste buffer, so let's just do it again. And now, just like that, we're logged in. Okay. Okay, so if everything is working correctly, and we already know everything is set up correctly because the Tomcat was running, but when you do an ls pwd, you'll be in your EC2 directory, and all will be good. So now take a step back here and say what we're going to do next is we're going to edit the Tomcat configuration file to include the address of the database server we created. So, we don't know the address, the database address, until we set it up. So we can't configure the server with that address until, to this point in the process. So, but let's cover a few other things here first. So this is undoubtedly the most complex part of the project. So who am I? I am EC2, but I need to be root. So you can go sudo -I, and that switches me to root. Okay. So now we need to modify this file. So let's find it. It's under user, share. I'm just using tab to autocomplete. Tomcat. So pwd, here we are, ls. And so these are a bunch of directories, and there's two we're interested in. The first one is comp for configuration. And there we go. So the file we need to modify is server.xml right there. I'm going to make a copy of it first, just in case I screw it up. I could revert back to it. To /temp. So in the temp directory, we will have our server XML file. Okay, so now the next thing I would do, how I would do this, is in this document at the bottom, right here. This is a template for the file we need to insert into that server XML file. So I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go here just to make it a little easier. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Pasting it in there. Okay, so there's these 3 lines, 7, 8, 9. So we want to first remove this template so it looks like that, and then we'll go to our here, and then remember that's our address. We don't want any spaces around it. Copy, then paste it right there, and again, no spaces around it. Everything looks good. Everything is fine. Then place the ID and the password you use to install MySQL. Get in 1, 2, yep, that's my throwaway. And that's it. Well, not quite it, but that's it for here. So here we are. Now I'm back in SSH, and I could open this up a little bit. Now I need to edit that file, server.xml. And, oh, my bad. One thing we need to do. As root, we need to first stop the server. So we can't edit the config file if Tomcat's running. So the way we do that is as root, we do a, I don't know if it matters if root or not. Oh yeah, it does. So as root, sorry, minus u. So sudo minus u, Tomcat. That's the user. So we're going to switch to Tomcat, and we're going to execute a script called Tomcat 8, not 6, 8, and then we want to stop the server. Okay, so how do we know the server is running or not? I probably should have done this first, but let's use a command ps -ef. So this will list all of the processes that are running, and there's a lot of them. So then we pipe ps into grep for Tom, and we see nothing. So let's go back. I know this is kind of, let's start the server again. So to start the server, sudo Tomcat Tomcat 8 start, and just that quick. And then we'll do that. So I'm using the up and down arrow for history, and we'll get to that. And then there, we got this. This is the Tomcat process now running, just demonstrating how you start and stop it. But we need it off. We need to stop it to edit the file. So it's off. Okay, so there's probably I can think of a half dozen ways of doing this more effectively, but this is probably the easiest to communicate. We want to edit the file, and so we could use VI, we could use Emacs, I guess. I'm not going to test it, but I'm going to use Nano, which is an editor, because it's pretty straight. It's a pretty straightforward editor. So Nano server.xml. All right, let's open that up a little bit larger. Okay, so now we have this resource. This is an XML. Well, this is an XML element, and its tag name, its element name is resource, and we need to place it. So you can't use the mouse to position the cursor. You have to use the arrow. So using the arrow, here is a tag global name resources. Then here's a resource tag, and then here is the matching end tag. See, it's got the little backslash in front of it. So I'm going to open that up. So what we have now is we have global naming resources, and we have a resource tag with a close, and we want to add another resource tag right here before global naming resources. So with everything all set up here, I'm going to copy and then select a window. Again, make sure your cursor with the arrow is at the correct position, and then the right mouse key will paste, and there we go. So now it's up here, and oops, yeah, I don't like that page. This page is kind of funky, whatever. Okay, so back where we were, global name resources, our original resource, and then after that we have the resource we just tacked in there. We'll give it a little space to look better. Everything looks good. Then we have the close, and then we have the close tag for global resources. So we've embedded another resource inside global naming resources. I don't know what else I can say. This is correct. So I'm going to save the file, Control O. and then hit return, yes, and then just exit, and there we go. So that's if everything went correctly, we'll restart the server again as root. Let's find it. Oh, right there. Oh, I did something wrong. Forgot a step. Let's stop it again. And make sure it's stopped. Come on. Okay. This is more of a diagnostic thing. Probably, I'm 99% certain it started correctly, but here I am at share Tomcat 8 logs. I'm going to go into the logs directory now. And I'm going to remove all these log files. So these are all the log files, and I'm going to remove the log file because when I restart, I want a clean log file, which will make it easier to determine, will make it easier to look for errors, which will indicate that, oh well, I know our installation did not work. So I'm just going to remove it. Now, being careful here, being in the right direction, log file rm star, and let's just remove all these log files. Okay, now we'll start again. Using the up arrow for history. I know I'm going to hit one sooner or later. I'll start it, and then ps sdf grab tom running, and then let's examine one of those log files. Let's look at catalina.out. So I'm just going to go nano cat out, and this looks good. So yeah, this is the whole file. It's not doing text wrap, so these lines are much longer. But if you open this file, and this is why I cleared the file, because this file will be much, much larger than what we're seeing here. Anyway, if you see anything that looks like a, oh, that's interesting. Well, live with it. If you see anything that looks like a Java walkback, stack trace in here, that means something's wrong. And it's probably that the SQL server is not running, or the firewall for the server is not set up correctly, or I don't know, you messed up that XML file. You know, when you edited the server.xml file, you somehow messed it up. I don't know what. That's a problem. Let's hope that doesn't happen to you. But if the last two lines are look like this, last couple of lines look like this, then you know you're good to go. This doesn't actually look quite correctly for me. Yeah, this is what I was looking for. Anyway, this looks good, no errors. So we'll exit out of it. I'm going to do that one more time just to see if, okay. All right, I opened it a little too early. It hadn't finished, Tomcat hadn't finished initializing. So wait 30 seconds and then examine the log file. And this is what I was looking for, these 3 lines. So now it's up, the Tomcat is fully configured and up and running. All right. All right, so this is the interesting part. Let's go to an editor and open up this, and see if we can contact the server. 1 second, I'm getting my act together here. Application overview, okay. And narrow that down a bit here. Okay, so back here, so I was thinking of something to myself. So here's our EC2 server. Actually, I left a step out, but let's just do it now. 4352. All right, then manager app. See, we haven't installed the application yet. So here's in the manager tab, Here is the main homepage manager. And now we want to install our application. So if I'm going back to the information I provided, one of the files on e-learning is this WAR file. So this is our web app, our WAR file, our web app archive, and it contains both the client and the server side of our application. So we want to deploy that. So here under the section WAR file to deploy, we'll choose a file, and it's already at the correct directory. WAR file, open, and then deploy. And it'll take a second. And there we go. So if this doesn't deploy, then you're probably going to have to look. I'm just curious what the Catalina looks like now. So a bunch of new stuff is in that file. Here's where we left off, I believe. And so this is all, but no errors. That's the point. No Java exceptions here. Let's see, go right to the end. No, all the way to the end. Those look like exceptions, but they aren't. Okay, so this is good. The app installed. Let's get out of that. And let's see if it worked. So we can just click on that app link now. And there we are. So this is a successful installation. I know this because it shows up on the screen. And the fact that in this table, we have one to-do entry, which was the default that was installed when we ran that SQL script. So another thing you can do is get server info, and it gives the IP address of the Tomcat, the EC2 server. Now, one thing to notice is when I go here and I look at, okay, here's my EC2 address, and it's 153.63, but here it's not 153, it's something else. This IP address, this is the private IP address of this server in the AWS VPC, Virtual Public Cloud, or VPN, Virtual Public Network, whatever you want to call it. So this is the internal address of the machine, and this is the external address of that same server through the firewall. So that's why they don't match. But the point is we have a machine, and if you want to add and some text, and it shows up. And if we went into Workbench and examined that table, I don't know if we need to. I'm not sure it'd be interesting or not. Let's go Workbench, log into that server, and database. I'll just do it again. Select rows, and now we have 2 rows right there. All right, I'll close that. All right, I'm gonna pick up again. Pause and start a new section. In this next step, we are going to need to duplicate that EC2, the virtual machine, twice. And so let's go over something here. I'll go over it later. So it'll be more applicable. What I was thinking of will be more applicable when we get to load balancing. Anyway, so the server is running, and so I want to go here. Let's look at the application. So here's our machine. It's running. Everything is good, but we need 2 more just like it. So one way to accomplish this is to repeat that process twice more. Create the virtual machine from the Tomcat AMI, and then start it, and then edit that file, and then test, and so on. And that would work, but it'd be a lot of effort. The second thing we can do is to clone it, clone this machine into a private image. So just like an AMI. So we're going to create an AMI from this machine that we can install twice. Now, I don't know if this is necessary, but in the back of my mind, I believe it's a good idea to shut down the server before we clone the machine. So I'm going to shut down Tomcat. No, not running. And then we're going to do this thing. So select the machine and go to Actions, Instance. No, go to No, where do I look for it? Image. Go to Image. Image. The thing is, I remember there being more options. I am in EC2. Actions. I wonder if I need to stop it. That's not it. Image. Create image. Just a second. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I remember it's not looking quite this way, but let's just run with it and see. And if it doesn't work, I'll erase this and start over again. Anyway, create image. And now we're going to create a new image from, clone to this machine. So we'll go to do EC2 Tomcat or something. Doesn't matter what you call it. And all these are okay. And so create image. Okay, well, didn't blow up. So how are we checking that? Images, AMIs. Oh, there it is. Okay, so before we can move forward, this process has to finish, and that takes several minutes. So I'm going to pause and come back. Okay, so the status changed from to available, and again, you could refresh. So now we have a clone of that server we set up. So we use it. We go to just like before. Go to Instances, Launch Instance, and we'll go to My AMIs, and you shouldn't see mine because it's not yours, but you should see your AMI. So we will use that. I'm looking at something for just a second here. All right, select. And then I guess this is where I messed up before. Do a review and launch. And then we have to fix our security group. So edit security group. And now we're going to use an existing security. We're basically going to use a security group we had before because it's set up correctly. So that one right there. So here is the one for the MySQL, and I'm looking at these other two here. Yeah. Okay, this is the one. And we can see here's our security groups 22, 43, 52, open to everyone. And so now we'll do a review and launch. And we'll launch it. And we have to pick our key pair. And, oh, that's odd. This is the one we were using, I think. Launch instance. View instances. And this will take a minute to go to running. I guess I can pause 1 second. All right, so that new instance we just created is now in a running state. And so let's copy that address down. So I just noticed, never noticed before, that our addresses are right there. So we'll paste that there. And just for grins, we will test to see if this server is working. So we'll substitute the 153.63 with our new and return, and there it is. Still just one machine, but it must be running because here we are. Here's our database. Here's our rows from the database. So the database is all set up correctly. So now we have two machines talking to the one database. All right, let's do that one more time. So instances, launch instance, my AMIs, the AMI recreated, and review and launch, and edit security group, and existing security group, and the one we used last time, and with the correct ports, review and launch, and acknowledge, and view instances, and there we have that. So I'll pause again. Okay, the third one is running, and so I'm just going to copy the DNS name there and paste it in there. So I already have it, but let's test it. And I'm just going to paste it in there, 4052 to do app, and boom, it's running. So 3 servers are running, connected to the database, everything is good. So now we have 3 servers running, but now we want to put a load balancer in it. So I'm going to start a new section. Okay, so now we're going to set up the firewall. Not firewall, we're going to set up the load balancer. And so I'm going to do a little drawing here first, and it's going to look horrible because I don't have my tablet installed on this PC right now. So I'm using the mouse. So we have 3 EC2 servers. So server 1, oops, 1, and okay, these servers are all listening at port 22, of course, for SSH, but they're all also listening, the web server is listening at 4352. Okay, and you knew that because that's when we log in to that machine. When we access it from the browser, we're using 4352. Okay, now we're going to set up a load balancer in front of that. We haven't done it yet, but we're going to. And so LB. So this load balancer is going to connect to each of these machines. And it's going to listen not at 4352, but at port 80. The good old port 80. So we'll have clients like our browser here. And let's say we have multiple clients. And they are going to connect to this load balancer at 80 at the load balancer address. Load balancer will have its own IP address. And then the load balancer is going to forward each request to one of the machines in the cluster, the load balancer cluster. So the first client request will go to machine 1, the second request to 2, third 3, fourth 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, round robin, and it'll all be great. So let's set that up. Okay, so we're going to go here, and now we're going to, in the EC2 context, whatever you call it, I'm going to go to load balancing, load balancers. All right, no load balancers yet, so we're going to set one up. Now these are 3 options, and this is probably the one I should be using, but there's an old one that I know how to use, and so I'm going to use that for this year. But it looks like if I'm reading this correctly, AWS is going to retire this old school load balancer this year. So when I use this again next year, I'll have to figure out how to use one of these. But for the time being, um, I'm going to just demonstrate the idea using that. So got to give it a name. To do demo LB. And I think we just leave all this out. So now here's like our firewall rule, the translation rule. We're going to accept messages on port 80, and then the instance protocol, that's the other side. That's the EC2 instances. They're listening at port 4352, as I explained a second ago. All right, so that's all that's needed there. I think we're going to need to set up a security group in a second, but we'll get to that. Oh, right here. So the load balance name, it didn't like something. Sometimes it doesn't mind the spaces, and other times it doesn't like the spaces. Try it again. Let me have a look at this now. Push the button. No. What if I should start over? Well, did I leave a space in the beginning? Yeah, see, there you go. That's what's wrong. I left a space. There we go. All right, so let's create a new security group. And we will call this to do LBSG. And this is for the firewall. So this will be the security group for the firewall in front of the server right there. So we're going to allow TCP port 80 from anywhere, which I think is what was set up a moment ago. But anyway, doesn't hurt. So I guess that's fixed. I don't need to add a rule. Security settings. Okay, it's not liking me because I'm not using HTTPS, but I don't have a certificate, and that would just complicate the demo, so why bother? All right, and so we got to change one thing here. Now, I'll explain this in class, but if we go to our document and we go down to load balancer, right there. See, there's this little right here. Control C. Now I'm going to paste it in here so I can make sure I don't have any spaces. And see, there's a space there. That would probably cause trouble. So it's all good. So let's copy that. So this is going to be, this is the URL of a text file that the load balancer will periodically request to determine that the Tomcat server is still running. So if the load balancer requests this file, and if it does not receive the file, then the load balancer will consider that server to be down and will remove it from the cluster. So we need to put that in there. No spaces. Good. Now, if we get this wrong, then it won't start. None of the servers start. So let's not do that. HTTP is correct. 4352, that's the app server port number. That's good. So we're going to lower these a little bit so it starts a little faster. So I'm going to set the timeout to 3 seconds, the interval to 5 seconds, the unhealthy threshold, well, this is the number of, okay, so 2 is good. And then the healthy threshold, number of breaths to before it is healthy. So I'm going to set that to 2 as well. So 3, 5, 2, 2. And then Okay, now we're going to add our servers. Now, because I only have 3 servers, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to select which correct servers. If I had more servers, anyway. So let's just select the 3 we created, being the only 3, and I think we just leave this the way it is, and then we don't want it. We don't need any tags. And as a review, and we'll create, and then we'll go back, and here's our load balancer. And then we will go to instances. And so now all 3 of these are out of service because the load balancer is checking them and sending a request to them, and with that timing, and it should happen pretty quick. Now still out of, I say it should happen pretty quick, but so these need to go to in service. So right now, the load balancer thinks all 3 of our machines are out of service, and that's just because they need, it needs to check several times that request that ping.txt file. Should be done by now. I guess oh, there we go. All 3 in service. Okay, so now we need the address of the load balancer, which is right here. So select that, up to the .com. You don't want the A record. I'm just going to copy that over here. And so no spaces or anything. Good. C. And now we're going to go back to here. And we're going to paste in the load balancer, hit return, and drum roll. Come on. Oh, my bad. I left it at 4352, but it's not 4352. It is 80. And there it is. So just like before, it's contacting the data. So now we're just to make sure we're clear, we have a client that's coming in on 80. The load balancer is sending it to 1 of 3 machines, and we're seeing our response. Okay, so we could add another one. And there it is. Okay, so that's all working. The database, all 3 are connected to, just like we'd expect, all 3 servers are talking to the database. Here's an interesting thing that, how do we know it's working as a load balancer? So here we have that get server info. And again, this is not the public IP address or the public names, but it is nonetheless a unique name. So here we're talking to the EC2 machine whose internal address is 32.222. So one of these 3. And let's get server info a second time. And the second time we get a different number, 3144. Let's use it. Yeah, 3144 175. Let's do it right. And the third time, 31 35 213. So let's just go by the last number. 213 175 213 222 175 213 222 175, and so on. So 1 2 3 1 2 3. And so you can see how the load balancer is sending the request to every machine in a round robin fashion, every server. All right, let's pretend, so let's see it fail. So we're using 3 servers now, and if we go to the console, we go to instances for the load balancer, and all 3 are in service. So let's go to EC2, our instances, and let's shut one down. So we're going to select that one, and we will go to actions, and we will change it to stop. And so now in a second, it will say, hey, I'm stopped. Stopped. Now we'll go back to the load balancer and out of service. So that machine's out of service. But our application, still works. Okay. What if we do the server info? So we'll get 213, 175, 213. Well, it's only two machines. Back to the load balancer. So I think some of those other versions of the load balancer would automatically start if I'm to say that, hey, I want 3 machines, and if one goes down, it would, it would dump this server and start a new server, using an AMI. But we're doing a simpler type of simpler type of load balancer. So let's just go bring it up back online manually. So go here, and I don't know, since it's still stopping. I'm going to come back in a second, pause, wait till this settles out. All right, so it stopped. So now I'm just going to start it again. And I'm wondering how long it'll take to start. So pending, and oops, wrong load balancer. Still Oh, sorry. I was looking here thinking I want to see 3, but actually, here's my list. Out of service. Let's go back to instances and wait for it to finish running. Should I pause? Running. Load balancer. And in service, just that quick. So it's back online. And if you go here, so we have 222. I'm looking at that right there. 213, 175, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's all set up and it's all running. So this is all the information. With this information, you can complete the, let me find that Explorer, the submission document. So you'll have all the information you need. Give me the DNS name right there, and the addresses of the 3 public addresses of your 3 servers. And then I will, of course, grade and return it to you. And then I'd like to get some screenshots just to know that you did the work. And if you have any questions, let me know. So with that in mind, the only thing I can say is once you've completed and submitted the document, now this is a question mark. I don't know how daring, oh, you have to leave it running. I was going to say tear it down, but I want to at least check to see, to look at your load balancer, that you in fact finished it, because I'm going to contact the load balancer at this address that you paste in there, and something like this. See there, and then I will, of course, I can copy and paste that into my browser and check to see if your service is running. So once I'm done, and I will return this document to you, and then you can tear this all down. So you'll want to first remove the load balancer. I'm not going to tear this down now because I'm going to use it for a demo, but you want to delete the load balancer, and then you go into the instances and delete terminate. So just select them all, actions, terminate, and that will tear those down, delete them. And then finally go back to RDS, and 1 second. Go back to RDS and go to your instances and select the browser. I'll select this and then go to Actions and delete that. And then you just have torn down all the billable services, and so you could just let your account idle. I'm not sure at what point you'll start getting charged. Don't leave them running though, because it'll use up your free time. There's a certain amount of free time you get with your, for when you first create your AWS account. And then they'll start billing your card. Not for very much. You'll notice I get billed like $1.75 a month to leave my account idle without any resources running. So when I'm done with this demo, I'm going to tear all this down, and rather than close my account, I just let it idle, and I get billed, a couple bucks a month. If you want to be sure that you never get billed, and if you think that you'll never use this account, you're not going to bother to learn AWS, then you should somehow figure out, do a Google search and whatever, and figure out how to cancel the account, or how to stop the account. Again, I'll say it again, as I said in the beginning, when you set your account up, you need to use some sort of authentication. Like I'm using Google Authenticator installed on my phone, and so it's just like Duo. There's an app running on the phone that gives me a number, and then I type it in, and I feel pretty confident that no one can hack into my AWS and again start using the resources under my account to mine for Bitcoin or whatever they do. That's about it. I hope you enjoyed the project, and see you in class.